You're listening to the Agent and the Fan podcast with sports agent Chris Leible and fan Lou Columna.
Welcome, everybody, to the Agent and the Fan podcast. I'm Chris Leible. I'm the agent. I'm here with my man Lou Columna, the fan. Lou, it's been a long time. How you doing?
I'm good. It's been a while. But, baseball season is upon us. I can't wait. There's going to be a lot of really fun things to talk about on this episode. So I think we should just jump on and get started.
Let's do it. What do you got?
All right. So first and foremost, we got to talk about the Mets and the Yankees, right? The Yankees have been decimated, with their pitching staff, with Stanton, the Mets, with their pitching staff, with Alvarez. I think that's going to be, for me, at the beginning of the season, how they weather that storm, I think is going to be really important to both teams and where they ultimately end up. So I just want what are your thoughts on that? Let's start with the Yankees.
So obviously the Yankees losing Garrett Cole, such a huge loss for them. He's been such a workhorse and obviously extremely effective. One of the top, one of the top pitchers in the game, obviously. And to lose somebody like that, how they lost him and for how long they're going to lose him for is a crushing blow. I think the Yankees obviously still have a lot of talent and certainly have a lot of potential and will compete. It's just, at what level will they compete? And that's I think the big question with them. Obviously they still have a lot of star players, and I think they did a nice job in the offseason of filling some holes. So, but I think obviously all that was based on the fact that Garrett Cole was going to be that, number one, clear-cut workhorse leader on the mound in their starting rotation. So where do they go from here?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's definitely going to hurt us. Max Reed, now is going to have to come up. Everybody comes up, right? And I even forgot about Heel. So we've lost him at least for the first couple of months of the season. Yeah. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. I really think they have to kind of weather the storm, right? They're going to have to kind of make some adjustments. Whether or not they do, that's what the season is for. I think we're going to see that. As an agent, you got, Garrett Cole lost the season. You as an agent, how do you console your guy and be like, hey, listen, what do you do as an agent when it comes to this, especially at that caliber of guy?
Yeah, of course. I mean, well, injuries, of course, are part of the game. They happen. Obviously, we're seeing more and more of them, especially when it comes to pitchers, and certainly pitchers who are workhorses like Garrett. So, it's part of the game. It's unfortunate. Obviously, no one wants to see that happen to anybody. And as an agent, of course, you just have to kind of go with the flow. And obviously, your client's going to be down and sad, but they also have to understand that this is part of the whole deal. And you just want to make sure they don't kind of wallow in pity and just work hard to come back. Obviously, his is a very serious injury that's going to take a long time for him to get back, but the harder he works and just making sure he follows the path that's been set out by the doctors and the PT people, which of course are the best in the world. That's the key. And obviously someone like Garrett Cole doesn't get to be Garrett Cole by not, understanding this and knowing how to, knowing what he has to do to get back. So he'll do that. So it's difficult, but it's obviously, again, it's part of the game. So.
No, I agree. I think that's very interesting. You said that. Going on to the Mets now with Alvarez, he's not gone for the year, obviously. Probably the first month, maybe month and a half, it's his wrist. As a catcher, batting, how is that going to affect him when he does come back?
Well, I think it was a hamate, right? I think it was a broken hamate bone.
Wrist surgery.
It was okay. Well, it was a wrist. I thought somebody told me it was a hamate, but I mean, listen, if he's out for whatever he's out for, a month and a half or so, I think is what I was told. it is what it is. They're not going to have him back if he's not healthy. So it'll rebound. He's a young guy. Young people, heal a lot faster. So he's, it's not like, he's 35 years old. He's in his early 20s, and obviously an important part of the team. Had a great year 2 years ago. Last year he struggled a little bit. I think that Alvarez brings that Mets lineup a lot of energy that is needed.
He brings a swagger to them, I think.
He has a lot of energy, because you got a veteran team, generally speaking, and even the just the way they go about their business. I think they're a very business-like team, the way they play the game, and to have him come in and give him some energy, that which he did 2 years ago, especially. Last year, obviously, it was a little bit some other things that happened that gave the Mets their energy, I think, which obviously Iglesias was a big part of that. And then, even like Acuna, when he came up towards the end of the year when Lindor was hurt, I mean, he came right in and did, brought out that youthful energy that, only a young guy could really bring. So Alvarez, that's a big loss. But like you said, it's, Garrett Cole is apples and oranges. Garrett Cole's out for the season. Alvarez will be back soon, and the Mets will be counting down the days, but I think they'll be okay. They still have a very strong lineup, and I think that they'll make do, and really have some good options, especially defensively, behind the plate.
Oh no, I think you're right. I think they're going to be fine. Sticking with the Mets and storylines, Soto. I was thinking about this, a couple of days. Listen, we've spoken about Soto. We know where he's at. This is where he is. I'm interested to see what kind of season he's going to have. He's going to have a good season. I mean, that's unquestionable. Is he going to have the season that he had last year? Because he had Judge behind him. He doesn't have a Judge behind him this year. So my question to you is, and it's not he's not going to have a down year. He's just not. I don't know if he's going to have the same kind of year. And then as Met fans are concerned, is that going to be a disappointment? In other words, if he hits 32 home runs, not 40, if he bats 290, not 315, are they going to be disappointed, or are they expecting the Juan Soto from last year? Because I think not that it's an anomaly, but I think the fact that he had an Aaron Judge behind him offered him that extra support.
Well, listen, I think, look, there's a lot of variables that go into the answer to your question. I think that I agree with you. I don't know what kind of numbers he'll specifically put up. I expect he'll have a good year offensively. And I think the Mets have a very good lineup, and Aaron Judge is Aaron Judge, but the Mets have Pete Alonso and Mark Vientos and, some good, very, very good, solid players that'll be batting around him. Lindor obviously is a factor. Starling Marte coming back healthy is a factor. There's so many different. You're talking about apples and oranges with the two different teams. But I think at the end of the day, I think especially in New York, we're both from New York. We're both New York fans. As to our core. That the answer is going to be how the team does. I think if Juan Soto hits 32 home runs and the Mets win 105 games, they're going to be thrilled with him and say this is the reason why. He's a big reason why for their success. If and really you could say the same thing. I mean, if he comes back and he comes and hits 45 home runs, but the Mets struggle and hover around 500, people are not going to be impressed by that. So I think winning at the end of the day is going to be the key. And the Mets obviously have a very good lineup. I think they have potential. Some pitching wise, they have good potential. I think the question is, will they be able to keep afloat while they wait for a couple of guys who got hurt? Not as publicized or hyped as Garrett Cole and Gil, but other guys that they were counting on. So will they be able to keep afloat? Will Steve Cohen dig down and go get somebody at some point if they're struggling. I think they do have some good arms and some younger guys and some guys that have helped them in the last couple of years that aren't really being looked at as like, oh, this is a savior, but guys like Buto, who, have given them good innings and will keep them in games and things like that. And maybe not be a lights out, number one starter type of guy, but who can go out there, give them 5 innings and give up 2-3, runs and keep them in a game and let the offense kind of, guide them.
Yeah, no, do that. No, I agree. I think it's going to be a really interesting storyline for them because, the Mets came out of nowhere at the end of the year. They were a really fun team, right? Like, the OMG and all that stuff. And it was such a really cool vibe from them, and I think that's gone, right? I think this year, like now, I don't want to say they're the hunted because the Dodgers are the hunted. But I think the lovable Mets thing is gone. I think now, with Soto, with Pete, with Francisco, they're going to be expected to win, and I think that's going to be an interesting dynamic moving forward.
No question about it. And there's no way that in their division they have a really, really strong division. The Phillies obviously have been extremely competitive the last few years. They're going to be there. And the Braves, they still made the playoffs and did well, but they're getting healthy too. Yeah. So the Braves coming back, they're going to pose a big challenge to the Mets and the Phillies, and they're going to be a team that's going to be there, no question in my mind. So it's a tough division. You got to play a lot of games, against those teams, and that's going to be a challenge for everybody in that division, but those top 3 teams are all formidable, and they're gonna be tough outs no matter who plays against them, whether it's the Dodgers or whoever, Yankees or whatever, pick your team that you
no, that's going to be interesting to see how that unfolds. Another big storyline for me, and I'm interested in your take on it specifically, is the Red Sox with Devers and Bregman. I think the Red Sox are poised for a really, really good year, a bounce back year for them. But it's going to be interesting to again, you as an agent, you have your, the star player on the team kind of being pushed to the side at 26 years old, potentially being a DH. And, he was resistant at the beginning of spring training. You saw that with Bregman, because I naturally assumed that Bregman would go to second. Obviously, knowing Bregman's a better fielder, I know that. But I'm figuring, hey, kind of like, A-Rod going to the Yankees. A-Rod was a better shortstop, but he referred to Jeter, because Jeter's he's the guy. So you as an agent, with your guy being Devers, how do you navigate that? And now moving into the beginning of the season.
Yeah, so obviously that was kind of an interesting situation. Bregman signed late, ended up going to the Red Sox. The Red Sox are trying to put together a strong team. You got a guy like Alex Bregman, who's a proven commodity, who's been a very consistent producer for a long time now. You got a chance to get him. Obviously, it's funny. Alex came to the Astros playing different positions, ended up becoming their third baseman just by the way the roster shook out between Altuve and Correa. Ended up becoming the third baseman, and then obviously he lands here. And again, as I've said on this our podcast so many times, I don't know the behind the scenes of what has been said, what has been done, who said what to who, and how that's all been handled, whether it was handled right or wrong by the organization. I don't know any of those specifics, so I'd be hesitant to call anybody out on that. You would like to have the communication lines open and make sure that's been discussed. Obviously, Devers has spoken to the media and said certain things, and again, I don't know Devers at all. I don't know what he was told or what he was led to believe. I think Devers is one of those guys. I think that people have questioned his defensive abilities in the past. Obviously, he's still a young player, and obviously such a great contributor as far as the offensive end. But the question is, but I think a lot of people have assumed he'll move to a different role at some point in the near future. I guess he didn't expect that to be the near future to be, the 2025 season. So I think he kind of was very outspoken about what he said. And that, again, I understand that too, because that's been his position and that's what he does. But at the end of the day, I think as an agent, you want to make sure there's a communication going on between the organization. You're going to want to talk to the team. You're going to want to have those conversations and be able to go back to your client and say, hey, here's what's going on. This is what they're going to do. They're not phasing you out. Or, right now they're hoping that you'll understand this is for the betterment of the team, and then try and kind of mediate and figure that out. Obviously, you always want to have your clients back, but you also don't want to create a toxic environment, especially when, like you said, on a team that should be a competitive team that will have a pretty good chance, I think, to be a playoff contender. And obviously a big reason for that would be Rafael Devers and Alex Bregman.
Exactly. For me, it's interesting for me is what if they had the same agent? You know what I mean? Like in that scenario, like how do you, because you got,
well, they don't, but
I'm saying, like, for me, it's like,
no, well, that's a whole nother story. Yeah,
that's
no, there's, I mean, listen, agents, there's a lot of conflicts of interest as agents. Right. It happens. You want to try and obviously squash those things and try and, keep the peace and, avoid having those types of issues. You want the players to be able to focus on the task at hand, which is, doing their thing on the field. So, that's a tricky spot.
I know. So just a sidebar on all this stuff. I was actually listening to one of your clients, Jose, talking about when he went to Japan for the tour, and how he and Utley, he's like, that's the one player he did not like, yet they were teammates on the team. And he goes, they didn't even talk in that whole trip. So I found that very interesting. It was kind of funny.
Yeah, Jose Reyes we're talking about, obviously. Yeah. Jose, the Phillies back then, it's funny. The Mets and Phillies are an interesting dynamic in that I've been around a while. The Phillies and Mets have never really been good together. Usually one's great and the other one's terrible. Yeah. So, in the 70s, the Phillies were great and the Mets were terrible in the late 70s. And then in the early 70s, probably the Mets were, late 60s, early 70s, the Mets were great and the Phillies were terrible. And then it reversed. Then the 80s came, the Phillies were terrible, the Mets were great. Then, the 90s, the Mets were down a little bit until the end of the 90s. So it kind of flipped back and forth. But that one stretch where they kind of were running head to head with each other, and it was, Jose and David Wright and those Mets teams of the mid 2000s, and then you had the Phillies, which was the Utley and Ryan Howard and those guys, Jimmy Rollins guys, and yeah, I mean, Jose definitely didn't have too much love lost for those guys, and I'm pretty sure vice versa. I think Jose played the game a certain way. I don't think the Phillies enjoyed watching him play. And then, Chase Utley played the game a certain way also. And I don't think the Mets enjoyed watching that. And Ruben Tejada was my client as well. God, so that there was that whole incident. And yeah, I mean, again, it's funny. Like I've been on, you talk about, conflict. We were just talking about that. I represented Bobby Abreu when he was, in the earlier portion of that before he ended up going to the Yankees. And, but he, Chase Utley had just come up then. Jimmy Rollins was already there, Jim Tomei, guys like that. And then on the other hand, I'm representing Jose Reyes and, some other, guys on the Mets, Johan Santana, Endy Chavez. So, Endy played for both teams. A couple of them played for both of them. But yeah, there's and Bobby actually ended up coming to the Mets at the end, but that's obviously an interesting rivalry. But that one little period of time where they were both very good, and now we're kind of seeing that renaissance now because the Mets and Phillies are both good, and they really don't like each other. But it's funny, like I grew up a big Mets fan, and I never really hated the Phillies because the Phillies were just like, I was a little kid, like they were very good. The Mets weren't good at all, so it was just like, all right, cool. And then the Mets became very, very good, and the Phillies weren't good, so it was like whatever. So before I got into the business.
So moving along, another big storyline for me that I think is going to affect both New York teams is Vlad Guerrero. Does he sign before the season starts? Doesn't he sign? Does he become a free agent? Where does he go? I think that's going to be interesting. Could he possibly be traded, at the deadline, assuming that Toronto's not doing well? Who the heck knows? But to me, that's going to be a big storyline moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think with Vlad Jr., obviously he's another guy. He's a young free agent, just like Juan Soto. He's this guy came up to the big leagues at a young age. He's going to hit the market young, and he's going to definitely be in line for a big deal. What that deal will be, that's a great question, and that's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. Obviously, the onus is going to be on him. He's gonna have that on him this year to have step up and have a fantastic year. I think the Blue Jays, Mark Shapiro has been pretty clear that they're gonna bring him back at all costs. We'll see what that exactly means. Yeah. I think that it's tough to do during the season to negotiate a deal because you don't want the player to be distracted. You want him to be able to focus from an agent standpoint. So that's something I always wanted to make sure that you want the player to not to be concerned with his contract and focus on the field. So that's important. Like you said, there's so many possibilities of what could happen. And again, like it'll come down to how he does. If he comes up, has a monster year, he's obviously going to put himself in a great position to get a great contract. But as Pete, again, younger version, but as Pete Alonso found out, what does that exactly mean? Because those first baseman deals, there's not a whole lot of them. We've talked about this a lot, but the Olsen and Freeman deals are the deals that are, setting the market there. And, I'm sure Vladimir is looking for more than that at this point. Will he get it from someone else? I don't know. Will the Mets, will Alonso, stick around? Will the Mets be in on that? I mean, they could get them both, really. Will the Yankees, be looking at him to kind of fill the spot, the money that they were maybe allocating for Soto, or obviously there are other teams out there, or will Toronto, get their guy? Because Toronto seems like they're in on a lot of these big name guys, but they haven't been able to get it. Just like we said, the Mets hadn't, but then they finally got Soto. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. No question about it.
No, I agree. I think that's going to be really, to me, that's going to be the ongoing storyline for the year up until if and when he gets traded. Who knows? Another big one for me is Paul Skenes. I mean, I've run out of things to say about this guy. This guy is just amazing. It's going to be interesting to see. The Pirates, I don't know what they're doing, first and foremost. Like, you have this young guy, let's be honest, you're not going to have him for a long time. They don't spend any money. I thought they were going to surround him with some players. Even with that, I think, obviously he's a draw, right? He's coming to pitch in your town. You're going to want to go to that game. I mean, this guy is just, and now he's like adding more pitches. Who the heck knows? But Paul Skenes, to me, this year, I think is going to really, in my opinion, kind of elevate himself already to like the top of, the cream of the crop in terms of the pitchers.
Look, I mean, this guy is an electric talent. He's so fun to watch pitch, And like you said, I mean, he's just I think the Pirates have such a stud in this guy. You just pray he stays healthy just because of, he's putting so much on his arm. But, it's so natural and free with him. And like I said, it's just, I'm hopeful that the Pirates will be able to use him and, get that team going where he can get that national spotlight on him. I think that like I said, he's somebody that Major League Baseball should be taking advantage of. He's got a personality. He has got the talent. He's got, my kids always tell me he's got a hot girlfriend. So
he does.
So I think that he's a guy that I hope that the Pirates and MLB take full advantage of this guy who's just such a talent and such a presence that I think that these are the types of things that baseball needs. And he's the type of guy that baseball needs to kind of be a focal point of whatever marketing and things they're doing. So I'm hoping that, I'm looking forward to seeing what he does out there. And he's, like you said, he's just he's a joy to watch.
No, it's going to be amazing. I mean, listen, so many storylines for this show. I mean, this show could be 3 hours, but I want to finish the storylines with the new evil empire, the LA Dodgers.
No, I'm glad you brought that up. So I watched the first couple of games, got up early and watched the Dodgers play. It's kind of unfair. They're really good. Their lineup is stacked. Half their team wasn't even playing. And, I feel like the Dodgers always seem like they have like 50 guys on the roster.
Yeah.
I think it's because they have so many stars that it just seems like there's no whatever it is. But, I mean, look, what they did last year was great. Obviously, to bring in, another addition from Japan.
A few more additions.
Yeah, I mean, was incredible. I think Sasaki's an interesting guy to keep an eye on. He's got, his splitter is insane, but he really struggled to throw for a strike. Obviously, a 1-game sample that I got to watch. Yeah. Big league hitters, though, won't swing at it if he's not going to throw for a strike. Yeah. And then they're going to send it on his fastball. And even though he's a pretty electric guy, he could hit some bumps in the road. But the ball movement is insane. So he's going to be interesting to watch. Yamamoto, great. Ohtani at some point might be pitching. That'll be some obviously to follow. And then they just have other guys. They have Yates is coming out of the bullpen, who's been a closer and very good player. They're just so stacked, huh?
Tanner Scott.
But I would say like Yates was like a whatever. Like another team signs him, they're like that's their closer.
Yeah,
and this team is such a great ad.
This team is going to be phenomenal. The one thing that I would say scares me because I think they're going to be good no matter what. But I always feel like, and we've spoken about this briefly at times, whenever they hype up a team so much, it's such a long season. You already saw Mookie Betts out, the first 2 games. And, who knows? Does Ohtani have a setback in pitching? Does Ohtani get injured, right? Does he, his hamstring,
listen, so many things at the end of the day, Mookie Betts has had a tough illness. I just came back from being sick and sometimes when you get the wrong thing, like it'll kick your butt. Obviously Mookie's just a phenomenal talent. And you could see for the playoffs last year, just how stacked they're. Teoscar Hernandez coming back.
Yeah.
Obviously Ohtani. But at the end of the day, you're right. I think, look, there's 2 things with the Dodgers, and when I was watching them play the Cubs in the opening series in Japan, my 2 things I was thinking of is that they have to be lucky and avoid major injuries. A setback, Mookie Betts missing a couple of games here, or whatever it is, or a guy missing a start or 2 or whatever. Those are things they'll certainly be able to withstand with their depth of their roster. A major injury obviously could be a problem, and then just I think at the end of the day, really, I fully expect they're going to breeze through the
Sure.
regular season, but the postseason's different. They, last year it didn't catch up to them, but they had those bullpen games they were running out there. If they get a couple of guys hurt or whatever happens, or Sasaki doesn't pan out like they expect or whatever, that could be a potential weakness. But again, you get in a short series, and they might not, they probably won't have the wild card series, because I'm expecting that they'll roll through the regular season and get the bye. But if they, that's where you could get them in a short series. You just run into the wrong team. We were watching the other night when the Dodgers beat the Mets and the A's in the World Series in '88, like the highlights of it on some show on MLB Network. I was watching it with my boys a couple of days ago, and that, just like a team of destiny just shows up. Barring that, it's hard to imagine the Dodgers not going back to the World Series and winning it again. Yeah. But it's baseball, and you never know, and that's the beauty of it.
That's for the next show. The predictions was for the next show. Let's finish this off. I know you have something to say for drum roll. We don't have a drum roll. The Miami Minute. Let's go.
Okay, Miami Minute. I'm just going to say this. If anybody's watching, if you're a draft fan, now I'm a big fan of the draft, okay? I'm the agent. I'm a baseball agent. But when it comes to football, I'm a big fan. I watch every minute of the NFL Combine, okay? I watch like 30 hours of NFL Combine action on the NFL Network, okay? I love it, okay? Now, this is an interesting draft. I think there's a lot of depth in the draft. There may not be, according to the experts, the one outstanding, like, superstar, like, no-brainer, this is the number one pick. But that's where I'm going to have to step in and say they are not right when they say that. I just watched Cam Ward's pro day at the University of Miami, and I am telling you, if you are an NFL franchise and you have a chance to get Cam Ward, go get him. He will lead your organization. He made every throw you could possibly make. The guy probably threw 70 passes. I think he threw like two bad balls, or two balls that weren't like dimes. Okay. The guy knows how to play. He moves on the run. He has different arm slots. He's strong lower half. He can get away. He has a sense about him. He's got a couple of small things to work on. He's a born leader. He's extremely confident. This guy checks every box you would want. I don't understand what the thing is, or why someone would say, hey, this is a down year for quarterbacks, or this is whatever it is. Shedeur Sanders, much respect. I like him a lot. Seems like a great kid. Like him as a player. Think he's a good quarterback. Cam Ward is the best player in the draft. Abdul Carter is a great linebacker. Think the world of him. Is a couple of really nice linemen. Obviously, the Heisman Trophy winner. Again, Cam got robbed of that. Hunter is a great player, two-way, does a lot of things, super talent. All great players. They're all going to make a great impact in the NFL. But why is Cam Ward not getting the respect he deserves? I believe the Titans have seen it. They know it. I believe they will take him number one in the draft. I want to talk about it in a future episode. In Miami Minute's going a little long. I can't stop talking about Cam Ward. I will never stop talking about him. I think the world of this guy. He is just the best of the best. And the Titans, do yourselves a favor. Take Cam Ward. Make him the face of your organization. You will not be disappointed. He came from nowhere to become this, and he's the real deal.
That's amazing.
That's the guy. Much respect, Cam.
Ward. Cam Ward, number one draft pick. You heard it here first, folks.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So, Chris, man, this has been fun. I think we're gonna let our audience know our next episode is going to be a preview of the season in terms of where we'll
make some predictions.
Make some predictions where people are gonna land.
And we'll have a special guest.
And we'll have a special guest.
All right, Lou. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We'll see you guys soon.
Take care, guys.